There you go, ready.
Hello everybody and welcome to the IIRSM West Midlands region presentation. Today we're welcoming Carl Cooper here from the Armed Forces, who's going to be talking to us about health and safety in the Army. It's great to see you all and thank you very much for joining today's presentation. Before we hand over to Carl, just wanted to give you a brief update on where we are with IIRSM and a few events and news and features to bring you up to speed. Firstly, we have the IIRSM Risk Excellence Awards 2022. And the deadline for entering that is the 18th of February. So if you've got any nominations you'd like to make towards that for yourself or your colleagues or your team, then please do check out the IIRSM website where you can find out more information. Also, we've got, don't forget, the IIRSM mentoring platform. So if you'd like to be a mentor or a mentee, please again check out the website where you can find out more information about that. Again, on the IIRSM website, you can find out further information about the range of training courses that IIRSM are now offering, including the Managing Risk, the Essentials course, which you can book your place on now. Finally, there's also the 1% Safer bursary in partnership with IIRSM, where, again, if you find out more information via the website, you can apply for that and find out further information. So we're part of we are the West Midlands branch, and we have a programme of events lined up for 2022. If you check out our LinkedIn page, there'll be further information on there posted very shortly with a range of events coming up over the forthcoming months. But tonight, delighted to welcome Carl Cooper, who'll be talking to us about the health, safety and welfare in the armed forces. So Carl, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. Welcome everybody. My name's WO2 Carl Cooper. I'm an Army Force Protection Advisor, and I'm going to be discussing tonight with you the safety responsibilities and organisation. Have a look at a case study, safety culture, safe systems of work and safe systems of training, duty holding and what it is with in regards to the Army, safety on deployment and dynamic risk. And then we'll have at the end of that an open forum for discussion. So safety organisation within the Army or within the Armed Forces starts with the Secretary of State of Defence, and he looks after all three services, and he writes the policy which the Chief of General Staff, who heads up the Army, formulates his own statement of intent and then cascades that information down into the Deputy Chief of General Staff, who is the appointed Army Safety Champion. Then that then goes down into the Chief of Safety, who I'll introduce you to these individuals in a bit later on. And he's a full colonel, and the Chief of Army Safety is a full colonel, and alongside him is the Chief Environment Safety Officer, and he's a civil servant, and he sits there and he is the link between the civil service and the armed forces. And directly below them in this chain of the safety organisation is where I sit. I'm an Army Force Protection Advisor, and I spend my time advising organisation within my area, the West Midlands. I look after 35 units, and that can range from the troops up at Hereford, so we've got 22 SES, and up to we've got the reserve units down in Falling Parks in Wolverhampton. So 35 units across the border, which I look after on behalf of the Chief of General Staff and Chief Army Safety. So here we have the Chief, the Secretary of State of Defence, the Right Honourable Ben Wallace MP. He's appointed as the Permanent Secretary, who is responsible for health and safety and environment, and he produces, on behalf of the Secretary of State of Defence, the safety policy. He works alongside the Defence Safety Authority, DSA, who provide the regulations and insurance and the investigations, and they work close in hand with the Health and Safety Executive. The next person I'd introduce you to is the head of the Army, Chief of General Staff, General Sir Mark Colton Smith. He's a very experienced officer. He's ultimately responsible for all the service personnel. He sets out the standard and is the senior duty holder within the Army. So he's the man that writes the statement, the initial statement of intent, based on what the Secretary of State of Defence policy is, and cascades that down through his divisions and his brigades down into the units. And as the Army's senior duty holder, he is responsible and accountable to the Secretary of State of Defence. Conducting defence activities is his area of responsibility. So whatever the government want the Army to do, this man is responsible for delivering that and ensuring that he delivers it in within the safe systems of work and within the safety risk management. So the more complex risks, more sophisticated the systems require to be managed. The Army has a full understanding of risks and what it faces, and it looks at different types of operational risk and the normal training risks that we have on a day-to-day basis. And we incorporate that into our values and standards, our leadership codes, our force protection guidelines, operational effectiveness, and our business objectives. All of that, this man is responsible for. He writes, as I've already said, the statement of intent for the Army, and that is then cascaded down. The next guy that I'll introduce you to is the Deputy Chief of General Staff, Lieutenant General Sir Christopher Tickle. He is he works alongside the Defence Safety Authority, and he's the newly appointed Army Safety Champion. And this has only just come in. The Army Safety Champion has only really just come into effect of last year. So he's like I said, is the Army Safety Champion appointed by the CGS and is responsible for monitoring the Army safety and health and environment and fire management across all of the Army's real estate. He provides the CGS with direction and guidance based on health and safety, because obviously the Chief of General Staff is a very busy man. So this man, General Tickle, he provides that reassurance. The Defence Safety Authority, they are the Army inspectorates. They are third line of the defence assurance, and they're regulators that provide the operational and training assurance and make sure that we are compliant. Not only we're compliant with Army policy, but we're actually compliant with legislation of what the UK provides. So they make sure, and they go out and they do regular visits. They're also responsible for accidents investigation as well. So there is quite an important role for the Army Safety Champion. But there again, he's supported by this gentleman here, Chief of Army Safety, Colonel Graham Livingston. He's put in position because he's a strategist. So he looks at where we are failing. He gets all the stats in, and he uses the Army Force Protection advisors to go out and deliver and provide assurance and guidance to the units within the Army. And then he reports up through that chain of command. Any questions so far? Great. So moving on then to lessons learned. Over the last sort of 10 to 12 years, we've had some bad press. And it's not just been little things, it's been quite dramatic bad press. And for that reason, we had first case study was Kaylee McIntosh, this young lady here. And she was a cadet. I'm sure that some of you have heard this. It was in the paper. She was on an exercise and she was in open water. They didn't have the safety requirement, and unfortunately, the young lady drowned. We had the Brecon 3. This raised a lot of press within the media, and these young gentlemen died of heat illness on the Brecon Beacons. And only in the last couple of years we've had this incident which happened to in the Castle Martin ranges. Unfortunately, Corporal Nielsen died in the tank explosion. And then we had a training exercise. We had a shooting exercise. A sniper was shot. He accidentally shot himself, and all of this was investigated by the same coroner's office, and it was all investigated by the Health and Safety Executive and the Defence Safety Authority. And the conclusion from that was that we needed to put in place a safety risk management and deliver safety risk training across the real estate to all of our soldiers, from private soldier all the way up to the CGS. And we deliver that package, and we deliver risk assessment training, practitioner training, and safety leader training, so that we cover all the elements of risk management to ensure that when we deploy in operations and when we deploy on training, on exercises, that we are training as low as our risk is as low as reasonably practicable, and also it's tolerable, and we're not putting people at needless risk. This is our safety culture. So the Army faces challenges. So we must be compliant with law. We must demonstrate that we hold duty of care to all our people, and we must minimize the loss. Now, the nature of our business being that with soldiers deploying on operations, nature of our business, we do go to places that are not friendly and inviting, and soldiers do lose their lives. But we have to make sure that we provide the necessary training at the right levels, and to give our soldiers a better chance. We promote a strong safety culture. We ensure that we provide that necessary training. We will also ensure that if anybody steps outside of the safety culture, and that discipline action needs to be taken, then discipline action will be taken against those individuals that are stepping outside their boundaries and putting soldiers needlessly at risk. It also needs to maintain a war fighting role. So that is part of our business, and we understand that we have to have an ethos of boldness, initiative, calculated risk, that takes on decisive, especially when we're on operations. Young men in their 24s are making calculated decisions that are putting other people at risk, but it's the part of our business. In peacetime, safety of all personnel and leadership is responsible, and we have we manage that with correct training, and we also make sure that we have subject matter experts that are delivering the training at the right levels, and we're always constantly checking and ensuring that we are pitching our safety at the right level. So if we have a soldier that comes out from recruit training and we are deploying out into operations, we can't just send that soldier out on operations. We've got to ensure that he's been given the right tool sets to bring him up to the right level before he deploys, to ensure that he's safe for when he goes away. So we have safe persons. So as you are aware, so the safe person is deemed competent through receipt of information, instructions, training, and is supported by experience of using knowledge, reinforced by a maturity gained by qualifications to the individual, which I've just already mentioned. Knowledge, but maybe applicable to some individuals, that we make sure that, as I mentioned before, that we have the right qualifications for those individuals. Why has that not come up? Unfortunately, there we go. We then have safe practice, which is part of looking at our equipment, because we deal with different types of equipment within the Army. Not only are we dealing with weapon systems, we're dealing with platforms as well. So we're moving tanks, heavy vehicles. So we've got to make sure that the vehicles are well maintained. We have the correct written instructions, and that we are that people are actually using those publications to ensure that when we're carrying out the necessary drills, they're doing it within the correct standards and procedures. When we're out on the ranges and stuff, we use a documentation that we use is called Pamphlet 21, and this is the pamphlet is the Army Operation Shooting Policy, that we make sure that those people that are conducting this training, it might be just 2 soldiers, 4 soldiers, or it might be 120 soldiers all on one range with different complexities of ammunition going off. We have complete control, and we're ensuring that those people that are managing that situation or scenario are doing it because they have got the necessary qualifications to deliver that practice safely. So equipment, as I mentioned, we've got different types of equipment. Most of our equipment is looked after by the Royal Electrical Mechanical Engineers, but we also use another organisation that is called Babcock, and they work hand in hand with the Army to ensure that our equipment is safe to use. We also, soldiers have to check their own weapon systems. So when they draw out a weapon and when they hand the weapon system back in, we ensure that they carry out thorough checks, and then they report any defects to the necessary people, i.e. the Royal Electrical Mechanical Engineers, to get those weapon systems fixed or vehicles fixed so that they are fit for purpose and they're not going to stray off the roads if it's an armoured vehicle, or the weapon system is not going to malfunction if it's out on the ranges. Last but not least is the safe place, and we've got to make sure that perhaps some of the most difficult elements in our safe systems of training is to ensure that we have a truly safe place. Not all of our environments we can turn around and say it's 100% sterile and it's safe. We know that due to the activities that we conduct, that could be out in Brunei in the jungles, it could be in the Arctic, or it could be out in Afghanistan, or it could be in Iraq. Currently we're out in Mali, so we not only we've got to deal with the situation there, but we've got climatic conditions to consider that would put our soldiers at risk as well. So we've got a lot of things to consider looking at the safe persons, equipment, practice in place. We put all that together when we're actually trying to formulate a risk assessment, and that is part of our planning process to ensure that we are managing our safe systems of work and managing it within the safety risk management process. So quickly moving on to our duty holding 21 structure. So part of when you saw those unfortunate people that lost their lives due to training accidents, that the duty holding responsibility. This duty holding responsibility came from when we had many years ago when the Nimrod crashes, and they came up with a formula to have responsibility from the Chief of General Staff all the way down to the lower echelon, to the subunits in the Army. And so the duty holder 21 applies to specific circumstances. That duty holders are appointed at three levels. So we have the senior level, which is the Chief of General Staff. We then have an operating duty holder, and these are appointed by the Chief of General Staff in writing. And when he gets appointed, he appoints them within 30 days. So I'll just show you the. So he appoints so we have the CGS here, who then appoints the operational duty holders, and these two areas here. They are responsible for home command. So that's all the troops that are in the UK. We have Field Army and Joint Helicopter Command. These provide the assurance, or they look at the risk that is being elevated from the risk assessments that are being induced by the units, the brigades, and the divisions, and they scrutinise this information, and they either allow the exercise or operation to take place, or they will then terminate it, depending on the level of risk it has been escalated to. We then have a delivery duty holder. This sits at a 1-star level. That 1-star is basically a brigade commander, and he has that responsibility to ensure that he supports all of the units, that he may have 5 or 6 units under his command, but he's there to ensure that he provides the assurance and support to the subunits. Each one of these individuals, from the 3-star, 2-star, and 1-star, are all appointed within 30 days of them coming into their appointment. Up until January last year, the commanding officers who sit at this level, at the lowest level in the unit, used to have delivery duty holding responsibility, but that changed as from January last year to duty holding, or duty of care, because everybody in the armed forces, from private soldier all the way up to CGS, has duty of care. Same within your working environment. Under the Health and Safety at Work Act, we have duty of care, to ensure that we are legally and morally abiding by our obligations. So this is quite important to, and it's a new structure, and this is part of the safety risk management training that we are delivering across the whole of the armed forces. The things that go wrong with us, because of the nature of our job, is human risk, it's human error. We know that we have a lot of high intensity exercises and deployments, and tiredness, it creeps in, and we have human risk. We get a lot of media attention, and I'll discuss that in more detail as we go on. We have a financial risk, because of, if we injure soldiers, there's compensation schemes to pay out, and it's reputational damage as well. But I'll explain that in a bit more detail as we move through the presentation. So, duty of care. We look in our unit, and you're probably fully familiar with the activity owner, activity deliverer, activity leads, and practitioner. Now, this is a new concept for the Army as part of our safety risk management responsibilities. Not everybody has heard this terminology, but the nature of those appointments were actually doing the jobs, but we just call it something else. So our activity owners are the commanding officer, who, or it could be the company commander, who's responsible for delivering that specific activity, and that could be the CO delegating a company commander to run an exercise on his behalf. So we have different varying levels of activity owner, but they are the ultimate responsibility. The buck stops at them to ensure that those individuals below them are safe to conduct their activities. Our activity deliverers are the individuals that are responsible for ensuring that the planning is safe, and that they have checked that the subject matter experts that they are using are fully qualified and in date. And then we then have our activity deliverers, leads, which are our junior NCOs, that they are the safety personnel that are on the ranges, or running the exercises, conducting safety activities. They're in date, and they're doing an effective job. And then we have the normal participants. We also cover in the Army, we are very into the protecting the environment. If you went on to our training areas, we have abundance of different species of plants, trees, and wildlife. And so, it's we try and do as we if you look at the armored vehicles there, when they're trundling around in tracks, they do have an impact on the environment. But we do put things in place to bring that habitat back. We are very much into climate change and sustainability. We have environmental reporting and we have environmental initiatives, and we encourage environmental initiatives for all units, and we do our own recycling across the board, and the money that we make from the recycling that we do, we put back into the Army, and that helps to for paying out compensation claims, etc. But it's very important that, and we start this at a very early stage when soldiers come into from basic training. We emphasize that we have a major impact with the type of vehicles and equipment that we're using, how that has an impact on the climate. We are making changes and we are moving forward to look at how we can change from diesel engine vehicles to electrical vehicles, and that actually is being looked at now, and it's one of the big things for the Deputy Chief of General Staff. It's his what we give it him, it's his baby to move forward in the way we make changes in for the environment. The commander's responsibilities: soldiers can be injured overseas, as I've mentioned, and exercise and operations. Often causes due to these accidents can be preventable. We apply basic safety and risk assessment techniques, and we use them both in the UK and on operations. And the commander's responsibilities are ensure that his soldiers under his command are safe, that we are managing our training and our training needs. We keep aspects of safety management. So we're looking at when we deploy, we look at our burn pits, we look at our fire risk, we look at our road safety, because we're on driving usually on the opposite sides of the roads. Usually the roads that we're moving are not usually tarmacked and very rough terrain that we're moving over. So our commanders need to have that 360 awareness all the time when they're moving on a vehicle, because in the back of the vehicle they could have 6 other soldiers. So they've got to ensure that they are fully aware of the vehicle state, and they're not being complacent when we're moving across the ground. We're not every day are we in vehicles. We are only in moving armored vehicles. Especially the unit what I'm with, they will probably go out every second month and move their armor, and so there is quite a lot of training is required when you're trying to manage these vehicles and also manage your soldiers at the same time. We have making sure ammunition is safe, so we could be in the back of a vehicle, or as you see on here, in the back of an aircraft, and we've got weapon systems that have live ammunition in there. We've got to ensure that and trust our soldiers that they are safe with their weapon systems. We need to look at the environment, i.e. the location that we put our soldiers in. Not only we putting them at risk within the against other foreign enemies, but we've also got to look at the disease and the climatic conditions that we put our soldiers on. So the health stress and health and climatic conditions is very important, and disease prevention. So we've also working with or alongside other ambulance services because of COVID, which I'll talk to in a bit more detail. So we have dynamic risk. Dynamic risk in the army, we call it QBOs, quick battle orders, because we have a plan and we put that plan. We've discussed that amongst ourselves, and we're now going to conduct our operation or our exercise or our RDS training, but not necessarily does the plan tend to go like clockwork, and things change on the ground. So we need to ensure that we are identifying those hazards as we're moving through our training or we're working alongside other organisations. It relies on the mental robustness of our commanders, their personal analysis of the situation rather than the written problem that they've already initially started off with when they've gone through that planning process. So we use the dynamic risk assessment. So exactly as you would do it in your organizations out there. So we will be looking at identifying the hazards associated with the environment that the soldiers are in. Well, then all of that information, if we're on a range, for instance, the commander has an opportunity or a soldier has an opportunity to stop that activity if they deem it to be unsafe and it's stepping outside the authorization or it's not within the accordance of our army safety policies, or it steps outside the safe systems of training, safe systems of work, and we're not as low as reasonably practical, or it's not tolerable. We can't tolerate that risk, so we can stop it. And if we change anything, then we then have a duty of care, and it's the responsibility of the commands to ensure that they record and they keep this information on record. And the reason why we do that is that we can use that information for other exercises or other operational deployments, so that we can plan ahead, and put that dynamic risk and apply that information that the commander may have come up with that can help in that planning process. What I'll look at now is a little presentation, and don't do this at home. So hopefully this will work. As you can see, the commander has carried out his dynamic risk. I think he thinks it's okay, and you may have already seen this presentation. So he will be making notes now and putting that into place. So that just leads me now on to my open forum, really. So that ends the presentation. That was quite short, actually, but that ends the presentation. If anybody's got any questions, if I can answer them, I will.
Yeah, thanks ever so much, Carl. That's been really, really interesting. First question I've got is where did you put the kids onto that last exercise? That looks great fun.
Yeah, that was at Brecon.
Yeah, because Downs also commented, that's great. I'll get my staff to try that as a team building exercise.
Yeah, that is definitely team building.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. We've had a few questions come in, Carl. Again, thanks ever so much for your presentation. John asks, the nature of the Army's job is inherent high risk, but it appears other industries such as agriculture and construction always appear in HSE statistics as the highest. What are your thoughts on this, please? And can these industries learn more from the Army?
I think it's actually we are learning more from industry. To be fair, regarding health and safety, we have been doing health and safety across the board, but I don't think that we have been doing it in great detail because of the operational tempo, and because the Army operates in a system of or organizations. For instance, if you take a major corporate organization based on shareholders, and it's all about funding, our soldiers are we look at our soldiers as money, So if we haven't got soldiers and we we can't do our job. So we've changed the way we are doing things, looking at based on what industry is doing now. So we've developed a safety risk management. We've brought organisations in to help us to educate our officers and senior officers to ensure that we are risk managing correctly, because that's at the end of the day, if we don't do that, we are having a major impact on compensation claims and payouts. And based on the Brecon 3, I think that's the probably biggest thing that we could look at is the Brecon 3 is um, there was a censure placed against the army because we were not doing the right thing. And I don't think that we're very strict and stringent. We have values and standards, and we're probably more stricter on safety than we probably our counterparts outside of the wire. But we're learning every day, though. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks very much, Carl. The approach you've outlined this evening has been really, really interesting. From a personal perspective, my brother's spent 20 plus years in the RAF.
Right.
Is there
Okay.
much of a difference between the approach you have in the Army compared to the other services, the RAF, the Royal Navy, etc.? Or are you broadly all on the same page with this?
No, there's a massive difference. We all have safety organisations. So there's a CISO RAF and there's a CISO Navy. But we're the only ones with the Army Force Protection. We're the only organisation within the three services that have 75 force protection advisors that travel around the UK looking after the units. And I think it's the difference between the nature of the job we do. You've got sailors that go out on ship that will have a health and safety representative within that small environment, where the RAF they have they report directly. They'll have civil servants managing their health and safety, where the army look at people like me that are serving personnel that understand weapon systems, understand exercises and operation deployment, can give that advice. And that's the difference between the three services, the way it
Mhm.
works.
Yeah, okay. Great. Thank you, Carl. Is there much in the way of collaboration between the UK armed forces and other friendly partners around the world, so US, Australia, New Zealand, Europe, etc.?
Yeah, there has been. That's what the Chief Army Safety he links in with the safety. What there's been an article. We have a safety magazine, and last year there was an article that we trained with loads of different countries, and especially we link in with the Americans, and they have a similar setup. And I think most of the things we do we're sort of mirroring, and it's good to see how they do things. I mean, the army is actually leading the way on health and safety. We understand it's very important. We understand that we have to have. It's probably at the moment not in the forefront of things because we are always constantly planning for operations. We've and to go on an operation, you have to have exercise and you have to have training. What we've got to do is try and switch that round so that their forethought is safety first, with the operation and exercise just coming slightly behind that. Once they've got that in place, which is the safety risk management, we will get there. But this is another 5 years down the line, so we are constantly reviewing what other armies are doing, and the army is leading the way. We've been out to Kenya, we've gone out to Nepal, we were in Cyprus this last year. So we are imparting our knowledge, because the Army Force Protection Advisors are they've got to have a degree level qualification. They've got to have at least 15 years experience. Most of us have left, re-engaged again, so we've done 20 odd years in the service, being infantry, armoured, Royal Electrical Mechanical Engineers, etc. We've got an array of experience that we're now putting back into the system, and we're being used to go overseas to talk to other armies to say, well, this is how we're doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, a really good point you've raised there, Carl, about that body of knowledge that you and your colleagues have developed over time. And as an OSH and risk management profession,
Yeah.
I think that's quite a challenge for us all. The demographic is broadly aging, and in the next 10, 15, 20 years, as many people move towards retirement, how do we actually capture that knowledge and then feed that back into the next generation and the future professionals coming through? I think is one for all of us, whether that's IIRSM or other professional bodies, but the risk management body of people out there, I think that's something that we need to really start to focus on over the coming years. How we capture that information, that knowledge, and share that on through.
I think we are working we are working more with IOSH than we are with the Institute of Risk Management, and we need to sort of open that up so that we're working in partnership with both of you, because you've got a wealth of knowledge, and because of our professional qualifications. We have some of our Army Force Protection Advisors are members of IOSH, and some of them members of the Institute of Risk Management, and we can get the different support that we need to when we're stuck on something. We come to you guys and we ask the questions, and we then take that information you give us in black and white, and we can turn that around and make it fit our organization, and that's really important. And I think we need to do a bit more cross-pollination, I think, and presentations, I think.
Yeah, that's a really good point you raised there, Carl. And that's right. If we look at team health and safety or team risk management, whether it's IRSM, ROSPA, British Safety Council, other professional bodies, not just here in the UK but globally, you're right. That collaboration and that cross-pollination, I think, is absolutely critical moving forward. Yeah. Good stuff. Just looking in the chat, we've got a few more questions coming through. So Darren asks, are there any areas of the Army safety processes that the health and safety executive would not have powers to enforce, i.e. are there any exemptions?
No. The health and safety executive announced in May of last year that they will come and check all of our training unannounced, and they don't do that. They do give us 24 hours notice, and they will come onto site, and we can't stop them. So we are strictly regulated to ensure that we are training correctly, and that they will check all our documentation. And actually, we welcome it. We welcome them to come and look at our training, because we can only get better as well as we move forward. If we put up the barriers as it's been demonstrated in 2020, a unit would refuse entry to the health and safety executive. That didn't go down too well with the chief of general staff. We want to work in partnership with them, and they work. If we have an investigation, that we'll have the health and safety executive there, we'll have the coroner's office there, we'll have the defence safety authority there. So we have to work in a partnership, and we have to allow them free access to our sites and to our exercises. They don't come overseas. We are not governed by them overseas, because we go to the health and safety guidance of that country that we're in, but we do take our own to ensure that we've got compliance throughout.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thanks, Carl. I guess where there's a conflict situation, then in that circumstance, HSE don't get involved in that. That would be down to internal investigation and any lessons learned.
Yeah, it does, but we still have to notify them, because we have the Army reporting cell, and they work closely with RIDOR and the health and safety executive. So any accidents that is reported, it will go in and it's scrutinised by them as well.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, good stuff. In the context of an operation, so there's multiple UK forces that are involved in an operation. Is there any precedent there, or is it each individual component parts? The army do their thing, the RAF do their thing, the navy do their thing. Yeah, a theatre of war, for example. How does health and
No,
safety get coordinated across the three different parties?
yeah, it'll all depend on who is the overall in charge. So if it's a army exercise, so if we were deploying to Norway, for instance, and it's a multinational organisation that we're moving over there, so we've got the Norwegian troops, we've got Dutch troops, we've got French troops working with us. It will be the general who's the head. So it could be a Norwegian general that we would work to. However, as we're in, this is part of the duty holding responsibility, that general, the British general, we will be having a memorandum of understanding, so that we would have that bridge between the Norwegian forces and our forces. So if we put, for instance, a British soldier into a Norwegian vehicle, we've got to ensure that they've been trained correctly in case that vehicle rolls over. Same as if we have a Norwegian soldier using our weapon systems, we've got to ensure that they've been given the right training. So once they come under our jurisdiction, they come under our health and safety legislation and guidance.
Yeah, okay, that's grand. I think a lot of people in the general population don't perhaps appreciate or realise the amount of support and effort the British Army particularly do for the UK population. So whether that's going to Whaley Bridge where the dam was about to burst, and or indeed did burst, and they're supporting the flooding for Whaley Bridge there up in the Peak District, or whether that's now a couple hundred members of the armed forces supporting the COVID operations down in London. How does that side of things work? I guess that's down to
Well,
dynamic risk assessment.
okay, so it's called military aid to civil power. So the government initiate it. We then have a standing joint command, which they will then ensure that the different areas in the region where the brigades are will set up a team. So, for instance, when COVID started, the early part of last year, 2020, isn't it? Um, I was covering, my area was North Wales, so I was responsible for ensuring that our soldiers were at the right level to go in to work with the ambulance services. So we had to ensure that we wrote the risk assessments for COVID risk assessments. Everything was off the hoof because nobody knew what we were doing. We knew of COVID, but we didn't really know what the serious impacts were there. No vaccinations, so we did the basic things. So 2 meter social distancing, we face masks, wash hands, and then what we then did started looking at how we're moving soldiers from point A to point B, how we were then working within the communities, because we had mobile community testing facilities that they would just turn up in a village in a vehicle, set up, test people, then move on to the next side. But we then had to bring those soldiers back, because then they had to go back to the families. Then we had to then do decontamination. So we started from that initial risk assessment, building up a policy, and then what we then called it Operational Phoenix, and then we had the force protection plan that basically gave direction to the units that needed to, how they're going to run classrooms, how to feeding facilities like kitchens, how we were going to sleeping accommodations, the difference between a cohort and a household. All of this we started to put together based on their initial risk assessment. So I was working in North Wales, looking after that, all of that area, and we had guys working down in London. We were trickling information into London headquarters so it would then disseminate out across the UK.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks, Carl. We've got a question here from Tony. He says, whilst it may not be practicable in a number of situations, are health and safety measures recorded through electronic means? As I can imagine, paperwork being endless. So I guess you're working with technology. You've got app-based systems to record your dynamic risk assessments.
Yeah, we that's a good thing actually. We're trying to get away from depleting the Amazon rainforest, and we were actually advised by a health and safety executive who came on to one of our ranges, and we were down in Castle Martin, and a young sergeant, he had a big Bergen on his back, and he had all the pamphlets, all the risk assessments, everything in there. And he said, what's he carrying? I said, well, he's carrying his library. And he said, why is he doing that? I said, well, because you're here and you're going to check it. He said, why hasn't he got a tablet? And this is where we started moving forward. So that happened 2 years ago. Now we go like electronic, because a risk assessment is electronically signed, and you can always track that back. Also, it prevents plagiarism, because even when you like workplace inspections and we go around and check them, we know probably 15 minutes before we've gone in, somebody just signed that, and it's a hand signature, so we can't turn around and say he did or didn't sign it, or through that chain of command. But on an electronic version, we can check back that history. So we are migrating and moving to the electronic format risk assessments, all our documentation, because we can archive them, keep them for 3 years, and we can save them in the cloud.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff. I think more of a comment here from Andrew, who says, good to see that health and safety have been taken seriously by the Army. The things I had to do and did now make my hair, bracket what's left of it, stand on end. So I guess, Carl, from your perspective, you've seen quite a few changes over the years.
Yeah, I mean, I joined in 1983, and I remember they produced an accident report book, and everybody took cover, and everybody was going, "Oh, I don't want to fill that in," because it was that, because we had Crown Indemnity in those times, or Crown Immunity. Soldiers did get injured, and nothing was done about it. We've moved on leaps and bounds now, and we are definitely moving in the right direction. Definitely engaging with organisations, and Severn Trent Water Authority we've engaged with Thames Valley Water. We've got guys that have worked on oil platform, BP, stuff like that, because all of this knowledge is helping us look at how we implement the service, and how we provide a service, not to stop the activities, but to make sure they're safe within a tolerable risk. And that's the only thing we can do. Provide the training, make sure it's safe, send the boys out on the exercise or the operation. Um, we are doing it. We are moving forward, because we are getting outside help as well, and we dig into IOSH. We should be leaning in more to you guys as well. So it's all dependent on who we got our professional qualifications with. But the 70 guys that are working in the system are actually moving health and safety forward, and we start at an early age now. We start at recruit level, and it just keeps going, because the new soldier that comes in today or tomorrow is going to be the new leader. He's going to be the new RSM. He's going to be the new general. So yeah, we can see changes within the next 10 years. It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And as your colleagues in the armed forces start to look at resettlement and coming out of the armed forces, what are your thoughts on a future career in health and safety? Is that something you'd recommend to people?
Yeah, I do actually. I'm an advocate of that. I say to people, because it's not it's not one of those jobs that's ever going to go away. You've got to have people in the working environment. It's got to be safe, and I do recommend it. But we recommend they put the work and effort in it, and it's not an easy job. And anybody who comes into it, and you are fully aware of it, you earn your money out there, guys. I'm fortunate enough, because I sit inside a nice little cocoon called the Army, and they look after me. And if I don't work, I still get paid. If you don't work, you don't get paid. And it's a rough game out there, and we appreciate our counterparts outside, and we tell our soldiers, don't be under any illusion they'll want a pound of flesh, and you've got to work for it. But it's a good job, and it's a well rewarding job. For me, my daughter has just started. She's a health and safety trainee. She's just started up. She went to be an events manager, and got a degree in events. And whilst COVID was on, I said, why don't you do this level 3 health and safety? So she went, yeah, okay. and now she's a trainee health and safety consultant, which is absolutely fantastic. So it's running in the family, and she appreciates the work that she does, and the every day is different, and that's what I like about it. Every day is different. I'm sure you guys appreciate that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, talking on a personal level, yeah, some of the finest health and safety risk management professionals I've encountered in my 20 plus year career have been ex-forces, people who have come out, they've had that vast body of knowledge and experience
Yeah,
previously, where they're not just dealing with a nick on the finger, they're dealing with some of the most
yeah,
significant risks that any human could ever possibly envisage, and that transition then into the private sector and so forth. Yeah,
yeah,
they have a real lived experience that is unrivaled in my view in many other environments.
yeah,
Um, and it's not just the health and safety here at IIRSM, the broader spectrum of risk management, where they're looking at cybersecurity in more modern times, health and
yeah,
safety, environmental risk, sustainability, as you mentioned there. You've got a lot of trees and a lot of greenery on the Army estate. There's so many different aspects of risk management that you and your colleagues encounter, and I think that's a real opportunity there when people come to resettle and move to civilian roles, where health and safety and the risk management profession is a real key area, I think, for those people to take a look at. And it's certainly an area that's in demand and plenty of opportunity out there.
I think you're right. I think because soldiers, service personnel are so diverse. I mean, because that's the way they're trained, and they can lend themselves to anything, and they will always give 150%. And I've been working I've worked at some civilian companies, and I put the 150% in, and I've been taken to one side and saying, "You're working too much. You're putting us to shame." And you think, why? This is just normal. But I think that, yeah, we do. We are the way soldiers are trained, or service personnel are trained. They can turn their hand to anything. They pick up things very quickly, and that's a good thing. And we can see risk because we deal with risk on a day-to-day basis. So you know that's why they tend to lean themselves towards health and safety, because they do it on a day-to-day basis. Not that we don't call them health and safety advisors; they've got different titles, but they do it every day.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've talked a lot about the physical risk side of things, Carl. How about the mental health and the well-being side? So looking at a question here from Darren, how does the Army manage mental health and well-being, taking into account the things the soldiers are subjected to?
Yeah, there's we have a thing called battle back. We do have post traumatic stress. That is something that is out there, and the army is um, constantly looking at. If we went back to 2005, we didn't have a lot of mental health, as in support, and we were always classed as people blagging their way through the system where actually they needed help. And since the deployment out in Iraq and to Afghanistan, they realised actually there's been a lot of mental health issues, and post-traumatic stress is a big thing. And we play a lot of emphasis on this, and we run TRIM, which is traumatic risk management programs, and the person in the battalion that heads that up is the regimental sergeant major. So we are constantly aware of, and every year we send out a stress management pro forma to the companies. The guys sit down and they fill it in. They get to a certain level. You've probably already done it in your organisation. To get to a certain level, we then highlight that, and then we invite the soldier in, and then we put him through the process. He goes through the trim package, and then we constantly manage them. We do lose soldiers due to suicide. It's unfortunate, and we sometimes don't actually pick it up very quickly. We are working on it, and we are trying our best to turn that round. And it's up to our junior commanders to check their soldiers. Unfortunately, we've gone from 8-man rooms where everybody was looking at everybody. Everybody's was in that one room. You could tell if somebody wasn't feeling right. But now that we've got individual rooms with ensuite accommodation and etc., soldiers hide themselves away and play on the PlayStation, so you can't really identify when they are actually at risk, because they mask it, and they mask it very well. But we are working at it, and it is a big thing that but it's something that the army and also the other two services are working at together.
Yeah, that's grand. Thank you, Carl. Question from Darren says, do the Army get involved in JESIP activities as do the emergency services? So for those who aren't sure, then JESIP is the Joint Emergency Services Interoperability Programme. That's looking at where the three police, fire and ambulance services work together for major and complex emergencies. Do the Army engage in that? And
we do. We have an emergency response plan. We run that every year. That means that we will, the brigades, like West Midlands Brigade, for instance, we will run an exercise that will involve the emergency services. That could be that we've had a major spill. It could be the fact that we've assisting. It could be COVID, whatever. We run those exercises, and we test our what's the word I'm looking for? Test our skills, basically. But what we have identified is you get some colonels that turn around and say, I'm in charge. Well, actually, when the chief fire officer turns up, he's in charge. And that is a really good thing to see when you're sort of working hand in hand, who actually takes the reins. And now, because we constantly do these things, people realise that actually the emergency services, we're only there to support them. The armed forces are. That's all we do. We do their bidding. And that's a good thing when you've got the ambulance service, fire service, and so we run exercise on Market Drayton and Turnhill with the fire service. They'll come in. They do it every November. They'll come in. It's just at the time when they're changing their risk assessments, and they are looking at they've got new personnel come through, so they'll clear the buildings, they'll put firefighters in there, all in BA equipment, and run an exercise. We've got on our site, we've got aviation fuel, so they can go through the process of a downed aircraft, all that sort of stuff. So it's good to see that we actually work quite closely with the local authorities.
Yeah, brilliant. That's great. Well, that is the end of the questions we've had come in this evening, Carl.
Okay.
So thanks ever so much for your time. Again, the feedback from the people on the call here, so extremely grateful to Carl for his webinar and response to the questions. This has been great, says Tony. John says, very informative presentation, a great speaker. Thank you. So from my perspective, Carl, as chair of the IIRSM West Midlands region, I just want to say thank you. Thank you to you and your colleagues for everything that you do to keep us safe. It really is truly appreciated for a role that I think is often underappreciated, actually, if I may say so, from the from people generally. You do a fantastic job, and thank you ever so much, and thank you for giving up this evening to come and talk to us. It's been very enlightening and very, very informative to hear just how health and safety is managed through the Army. We really do appreciate your time. It's much appreciated. This session has been recorded, so it'll be made available online for people afterwards to come and listen in. And hopefully we'll speak to you again soon. And of course, you're most welcome to come along anytime to the IIRSM West Midlands region and be part of our community here, sharing like-minded expertise with other risk management professionals.
Okay, thank you very much, John. And I'd like to say thank you very much to Donna for all the support she's provided me over the last few weeks. But thank you very much for your time.
That's brilliant. Great. Thanks, you.
Thanks, Carl.
Okay.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Carl. And thank you everyone for attending as well.
That's great. Have a good evening, everybody, and we'll speak to you again soon. And keep a lookout on the IIRSM West Midlands region LinkedIn page with details about upcoming events over the next few months and beyond. Thanks, everybody. Stay safe. Speak to you soon.
Good night.
Good night. Bye.
Good night. Thanks very much.